Nathan Westbrook was smiling when he slid the termination letter across his desk. Not a polite smile, not even a professional smile. A genuine, satisfied smile. The kind someone wears when they've wanted to do something for a long time and finally got permission. Effective immediately, Aris. HR will escort you out. Please leave all company property, including that ridiculous binder you insist on dragging everywhere. That ridiculous binder, 3 inches thick, organized with color-coded tabs, containing every policy clarification, every email directive, every procedural change from the past 4 years. My clutter, as Nathan called it. 6 weeks later, their corporate lawyer, Michelle Graves, was crying on my voicemail. Actual tears audible between words. Aris, please. The regulatory fine is $100,000. We need those records. Please call me back. I listened to the message twice. Then I turned off my phone. Access permanently denied. If this story sounds familiar to anyone out there, if the feeling of being dismissed until the moment someone needs something resonates, that subscribe button matters. We just crossed our first milestone together, and heading toward 2,000 subscribers means building a space where these experiences get told honestly, not with satisfaction or bitterness, but with the truth about what happens when companies value convenience over competence. My name is Aris Patel, and until 6 weeks ago, I was the Compliance Documentation Specialist at Westbrook Financial Services. That title meant I was responsible for maintaining records of every regulatory requirement, every policy implementation, every procedural update that kept the company legally compliant. My grandfather came to Detroit with nothing, worked assembly lines for 30 years, and taught me that details matter. That the small things people overlook are often the things that matter most. That honest work, no matter how unglamorous, has dignity. That perspective, that instinct to document, to preserve, to maintain careful records was exactly what Nathan Westbrook hated about me, and exactly what would have saved his company if he'd let me do my job. Let me explain what that binder actually was. Westbrook Financial Services managed investment portfolios for mid-sized institutional clients, pension funds, university endowments, nonprofit foundations. We weren't a massive Wall Street firm, but we handled about $2.3 billion in assets. That size meant regulatory oversight from multiple agencies. SEC compliance, FINRA regulations, state-level financial requirements, fiduciary standards. My job was making sure we followed all of it. The industry changes constantly. New regulations, updated guidance, revised interpretations of existing rules. Every change requires documentation. Proof that the company knew about the requirement, understood it, and implemented appropriate procedures. Most firms use digital compliance management systems, expensive software that tracks everything automatically. Westbrook had one of those systems too. It cost $180,000 annually. But I also kept the binder. Physical copies of every critical document. Policy memos, regulatory updates, email confirmations, implementation records, organized chronologically and by category, printed, hole-punched, labeled. Why? Because digital systems fail. Software gets updated and old records become inaccessible. Databases crash. Files get corrupted. And when a regulatory auditor asks to see documentation from 3 years ago, the system crashed isn't an acceptable answer. The binder was my insurance policy, the company's insurance policy, really, though they never saw it that way. Nathan saw it as clutter, old-fashioned, inefficient, a physical representation of everything he thought was wrong with the company's culture. Nathan Westbrook became VP of Operations 18 months ago, 42 years old, background in tech startups, hired specifically to modernize operations and eliminate inefficiencies. He loved phrases like streamline processes and optimize workflows and leverage digital solutions. He hated anything that looked like the old way of doing things. First meeting with my department, he'd pointed at the binder on my desk. What's that? Compliance documentation backup, physical copies of critical regulatory records. We have a digital system for that. Cost the company 6 figures. Yes, this is backup in case the digital system fails. The system doesn't fail. That's the point of the system. Systems can fail. This ensures we always have access to required documentation. Nathan smiled. That same smile he'd wear 18 months ago while firing me. Aris, part of modernization is trusting our systems. We can't move forward if everyone's maintaining redundant paper files. How about we phase out the binder, show some confidence in our digital infrastructure? It wasn't really a suggestion, but it was phrased like one, so I treated it like one. I'd prefer to maintain both systems. The physical backup doesn't interfere with digital operations. It interferes with culture. It sends a message that we don't trust our own systems. Perception matters. Compliance matters more than perception. Wrong answer. Nathan's smile tightened. Let me be clearer. The binder is clutter. It makes the office look disorganized. As part of our new operational standards, all documentation will be digital only. Please dispose of physical files by end of week. I didn't dispose of the binder. I also didn't flaunt it. Kept it in my lower desk drawer instead of on my desk. Continued updating it, just less visibly. For 6 months, this worked. Nathan's attention moved to other modernization initiatives, replacing the phone system, implementing new project management software, redesigning the office layout. Then came the workspace audit. Nathan decided every department needed to implement clean desk protocols. No personal items, no unnecessary paperwork, everything stored in designated filing systems. The goal, allegedly, was to create a more professional environment. The real goal was control, making everything look the way Nathan wanted it to look. The audit happened on a Tuesday morning. Nathan personally inspected each workspace with Harmony Chen from HR. They came to my desk while I was in a meeting. When I returned, there was a note. See me immediately. NW. Nathan's office. Harmony sitting to the side with her laptop. The binder on Nathan's desk. Found this in your drawer. Thought we discussed eliminating redundant paper files. We discussed it. I maintained backup documentation because it's essential for compliance verification. Essential according to who? According to regulatory best practices, physical backups ensure continuous access to required records. Nathan opened the binder, flipped through pages like he was examining evidence. This is hundreds of pages of material we already have digitally. It's taking up space, creating fire hazards, and directly violating the clean desk policy. Compliance documentation exemptions are standard in clean desk policies. Regulatory records are... Aris. Nathan closed the binder. This isn't about regulations. This is about following directives. I gave you a clear instruction 6 months ago. You ignored it. That's insubordination. Harmony shifted uncomfortably. I maintained compliance documentation that protects the company. That's my job. Your job is what I tell you it is, and I'm telling you this binder represents exactly the kind of outdated thinking we're trying to eliminate. We have a $180,000 digital system. Use it. And if the system fails? It won't fail. Technology fails. Having physical backup. Aris, are you capable of following a simple instruction? Yes or no? The question hung there. Harmony was typing notes, not looking up. I can follow instructions that don't compromise compliance integrity. Nathan smiled. Then we have a problem. The formal write-up came the next day. Failure to comply with operational directives, insubordination, resistance to organizational modernization efforts. I was put on a performance improvement plan, 30 days to demonstrate adaptability and alignment with company culture. Translation, 30 days to become someone who followed orders without question. I met with Harmony privately. This is retaliation for maintaining compliance documentation. Harmony, I understand your perspective, but Nathan is your supervisor. When he gives operational directives, there's an expectation of compliance. Even when those directives create regulatory risk? Has our digital compliance system failed? Not yet. Then, right now, this is about workplace conduct, not compliance issues. There it was. Until something actually went wrong, maintaining protection against that thing going wrong looked like paranoia, insubordination, resistance. I considered going over Nathan's head, but Nathan reported directly to Christopher Hardwick, the CEO who'd hired him specifically to modernize operations. Complaining about Nathan's modernization efforts to the person who hired him to modernize operations was unlikely to end well. So I did the only thing I could do. I made a copy of the binder, complete duplicate, took it home, kept the original at work to satisfy Nathan's surveillance. 2 weeks into the performance improvement plan, I was called to another meeting. Nathan, Harmony, and this time Christopher Hardwick himself. That's when I knew. Aris, thank you for joining us, Christopher began. After careful consideration, we've decided to end your employment with Westbrook Financial Services, effective immediately. Based on what grounds? Nathan answered, continued resistance to operational improvements, failure to meet performance plan objectives, and fundamental misalignment with company culture. I've met every objective in the performance plan. The objectives were about demonstrating adaptability, your attitude in meetings, your continued questioning of directives, your general resistance to change. These all indicate someone who isn't aligned with where this company is heading. Christopher looked uncomfortable but stayed silent. This is retaliation for maintaining compliance documentation. Harmony spoke up. Aris, we've documented multiple instances of insubordination unrelated to the binder issue. Such as what? Questioning the new project management system implementation timeline, raising concerns about the filing system reorganization, suggesting the phone system upgrade was premature. Those were operational concerns. That's part of my job. Your job is compliance documentation, not questioning every decision I make. We need team members who support progress, not obstruct it. Christopher finally spoke. Aris, we appreciate your service. This isn't about your competence in compliance, it's about finding the right fit as we evolve as an organization. Corporate speak for, Nathan wants you gone and I'm not going to overrule him. Nathan slid the termination letter across his desk. That smile, that satisfied, victorious smile. Please leave all company property, including that ridiculous binder you insist on dragging everywhere. They escorted me to my desk, watched while I collected personal items. Harmony handed me a box. The binder stayed in my drawer, company property as requested. I walked out of Westbrook Financial Services at 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. 6 years of work ended because I'd committed the sin of being thorough. The first week after termination was strange. No meetings to attend, no emails to answer, no regulations to track, just empty days and the growing realization that speaking up had cost exactly what it always costs. Employment lawyers told me I probably had a wrongful termination case, but probably wasn't definitely, and legal battles take years and money and emotional energy. I took the week to think. Then my phone started ringing. First call came 12 days after my termination. Unknown number. I answered out of habit. Aris, this is Kenji Yamamoto from Westbrook Financial. We need to access some documentation from 2021. The digital system is showing the files, but they won't open. Do you remember where the physical backups might be stored? Kenji, good guy, worked in portfolio management, always respectful. Nathan had all physical documentation eliminated. Everything should be in the digital system. Right, but the files are corrupted or something. We have a regulatory audit starting Monday, and we need to produce records of policy implementation from the 2021 FINRA updates. You're the one who organized all that. I was, before I was terminated for maintaining thorough records. Pause. Aris, I know how you feel, but this audit is serious. Can you just tell us where to find the documentation? In the digital system that Nathan insisted was infallible. Please, I'm not the one who fired you. We just need help. Part of me wanted to help Kenji, but helping Kenji meant helping Nathan, meant proving that all my warnings were correct by rescuing them from the consequences of ignoring those warnings. I don't have access to company systems anymore. Access permanently denied. That's what termination means. I hung up. Second call came 2 days later. Michelle Graves, the corporate lawyer. Aris, this is Michelle from legal. We have a situation with the upcoming regulatory audit. Some documentation from 2021 appears to be inaccessible in our digital system. We understand you maintained backup records. We'd like to hire you as a consultant to help us locate and organize the necessary materials. Professional, courteous, completely avoiding any acknowledgement of why I'd been fired. Those backup records were the ridiculous binder I was terminated for maintaining. I understand there were disagreements about documentation procedures. This would be a separate consulting engagement. We'd pay your normal hourly rate plus a consulting premium. Where's the binder now? We're not sure. It may have been disposed of during an office reorganization. There it was. They'd thrown away the exact documentation they now needed. So you terminated me for maintaining backup records, disposed of those records, and now want me to recreate them? Aris, I know this is frustrating, but the regulatory audit could result in significant fines if we can't produce the required documentation. We're willing to compensate you fairly. How significant are the fines? Pause. Potentially in the six-figure range. Then you should probably invest in better digital systems. I hung up. The calls kept coming. Different people, same request. We need those records. We need your help. We're willing to pay. Each call was easier to ignore than the last, because this wasn't about money. This was about a company that had valued appearance over substance, convenience over thoroughness, Nathan's ego over operational reality. They'd made a choice: fire the person who saw problems coming, eliminate the systems that protected against those problems, bet everything on the assumption that preparation was the same as paranoia. Now the consequences were arriving, and suddenly the paranoid person didn't seem so unreasonable. 3 weeks after my termination, I got a different kind of call. Regulatory investigator from FINRA. They were conducting the audit and had questions about policy implementation documentation from 2021-2023. I answered honestly. I'd maintained comprehensive documentation during my employment. That documentation was company property and remained with the company when I was terminated. Where it went after that, I couldn't say. The investigator thanked me and hung up. 2 days later, Michelle called again. This time, the professional courtesy was gone. Aris, the regulatory investigation has expanded. We're facing potential fines of $100,000 for insufficient documentation. We need those records immediately. I don't have company records. I was terminated and escorted out. All company property remained with the company. The binder you kept. We know you maintained physical copies. Where are they? Company property. Left in my desk drawer when I was terminated. "We've searched, it's not there." "Then someone at the company disposed of it. That's not my responsibility." "Aris, please, this fine could seriously damage the company. People could lose their jobs." That hit differently. Not Nathan losing his job. Regular people. Kenji, the analysts, the administrative staff who had nothing to do with this. But I didn't create this situation. I'd tried to prevent it. "Michelle, I spent 6 years doing everything right, maintaining thorough records, following best practices, protecting the company from exactly this scenario. I was fired for it, specifically and explicitly fired for maintaining the documentation you're now desperate to access. I don't have those records anymore. Even if I did, I wouldn't be obligated to help. We'll pay you, name your price." This isn't about money. Then what is it about? Accountability. Nathan made a choice. The company supported that choice. Now the company lives with that choice. I hung up. The next voicemail came that evening. Michelle again, but different. Her voice was shaking, crying, actually crying while she spoke. "Aris, please, the fine came through. $100,000. Christopher is talking about layoffs to cover it. Nathan is blaming everyone except himself. I'm trying to hold this together, but I need those records. If you ever cared about this company, about the people here, please call me back." I listened to the message. Turning off that phone felt like closing a door. Final. Irreversible. Some people might call it cold, heartless even. Michelle was crying. Real people were facing layoffs. The company I'd given 6 years to was suffering. But here's what those people weren't seeing. I'd watched Nathan dismantle every protection I'd built, watched him prioritize appearance over function, ego over expertise, watched him smile while firing someone whose only crime was being thorough. And now the bill was coming due. Not because I wanted revenge, because consequences exist. Because the decision to eliminate backup systems, to fire the person maintaining those systems, to ignore warnings about digital vulnerabilities, those decisions had logical outcomes. This was that outcome. Christopher Hardwick left me a voicemail 2 days after I turned off my phone. I listened to it a week later. "Aris, this is Christopher. I owe you an apology. Nathan assured me the digital systems were completely reliable and that your documentation methods were redundant. I should have verified that independently. The regulatory fine has put us in a difficult position. If you're willing to discuss this, please call me. We'd like to make this right." Too late. Months too late. Making it right would have been questioning Nathan's reasoning before firing me. Making it right would have been verifying that eliminating backup systems was actually safe. Making it right would have been listening when I raised concerns instead of labeling them as resistance. Making it right now just meant cleaning up the mess. I didn't call back. Word spread through the industry. Financial services is a smaller world than people realize. Everyone knows everyone eventually. The story varied depending on who told it. Some versions had me as a whistleblower who exposed corporate negligence. Others painted me as a disgruntled employee who sabotaged the company out of spite. Neither was quite accurate. I was someone who did the job correctly, got fired for doing it, and declined to rescue the company from its own decisions. Nathan Westbrook's LinkedIn updated 6 weeks after my termination. Pursuing new opportunities. Corporate speak for fired or forced out. Too late for that to feel like vindication. Christopher sent an email 3 months later. Official, legal department CC'd. "Aris, Westbrook Financial Services would like to formally offer you reinstatement at your previous position with a 15% salary increase and a reporting structure that bypasses operational management. We recognize the value of your documentation systems and would like to implement them company-wide. Please consider this offer seriously." 15%? Reinstatement? Autonomy? Everything
The
I should have
reinstatement
wanted
offer
sat in my inbox before I could bring myself to respond. Those 3 days were harder than the entire termination process, because now I had a choice that actually mattered. Going back meant financial security. It meant validation that I'd been right all along. It meant watching Nathan's dismissive smile get erased by my return. But it also meant something else. I kept thinking about a conversation I'd had with my grandfather years ago. I was in college, working a retail job where the manager constantly changed schedules without notice, made planning anything impossible. I'd complained about it over one of our coffee shop visits. "Why don't you find a different job?" he'd asked. "Because jobs are hard to find, and this one pays okay." He'd stirred his chai slowly, thinking. "When I worked assembly line, there was supervisor, very mean man, yelled at everyone, made people feel small. One day, plant manager saw this, fired supervisor. Week later, they offered him different position, less authority, same pay. Wanted to keep his experience. Did he take it? Yes, and everyone hated coming to work again within month, because companies showed us they valued his experience more than our dignity. The job was same, but trust was broken. I hadn't understood then. I was young, pragmatic. A job was a job. Money was money. But sitting with Christopher's reinstatement offer, I understood perfectly. Westbrook could offer me 15%, 20%, double my salary. It wouldn't change that when it mattered, when the choice was between Nathan's ego and my expertise, they'd chosen Nathan. They'd chosen wrong, yes, and they paid for it, but the choice itself revealed something fundamental about how they made decisions. And people don't fundamentally change just because one decision went badly. The doubt crept in, though. Was I being stubborn? Prideful? Was turning down a good offer just cutting off my nose to spite my face? I called my grandfather. He was 83 now, still sharp, still drinking chai at the same coffee shop. I explained everything: the binder, the firing, the fine, the reinstatement offer. He listened without interrupting. When he finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "They want you back because they need you or because they respect you?" The question cut through everything. They need me. And when they don't need you anymore? There it was, the answer I'd been avoiding. When the crisis passed, when the new compliance director got settled, when the documentation systems were rebuilt by someone else, what would happen then? Would they remember this lesson? Or would the next Nathan Westbrook come in with the next modernization initiative and the whole cycle would start again? Trust, once broken, doesn't heal just because circumstances change. It heals when the underlying values change. And nothing in Christopher's offer suggested Westbrook's values had shifted, just their immediate needs. I read Christopher's email sitting in a coffee shop, an independent place my grandfather used to take me to. He'd order chai, I'd get hot chocolate, and he'd tell me stories about the assembly line. "The line runs because everyone does their part," he'd say. "One person cuts corners, the whole thing breaks down. Doesn't matter if that person is supervisor or worker. Quality is quality." Quality is quality. I'd maintained quality, did the work right, even when it was dismissed as clutter, even when it made me look paranoid or resistant or outdated. And when the system broke down, the breakdown proved that quality mattered. But going back, accepting reinstatement, that felt like agreeing that everything was fine now, that a salary increase and organizational restructuring fixed what was fundamentally broken. It didn't fix that they'd valued Nathan's confidence over my competence. It didn't fix that they'd waited until a $100,000 fine to consider that maybe, possibly, the person doing the job knew something worth hearing. I drafted 3 different responses to Christopher's email. The first was professional, thanking them for the offer, declining politely, wishing them well. The second was honest, explaining exactly why reinstatement wasn't enough, why trust, once broken this thoroughly, couldn't be rebuilt with salary increases. The third was what I actually sent. Christopher, thank you for the offer. I appreciate the acknowledgement. However, I've accepted a position with another firm. My documentation systems are proprietary methods I developed independently. They remain my intellectual property. Best wishes for Westbrook's continued success. Aris. Short, professional, final. The position I'd accepted was with Hartman and Associates, a smaller financial services firm that specialized in nonprofit endowment management. During my interview, the managing partner, Louise Hartman, had asked about my documentation methods. I had explained the binder system, physical backups, organized chronologically and by category, maintained alongside digital systems. Louise had smiled. Not Nathan's smile, a genuine smile of recognition. My father ran a manufacturing plant. He kept a notebook of every order, every specification, every customer request, even after they computerized everything. Said computers were great until they weren't. How soon can you start? 6 months into working at Hartman and Associates, I heard through the network that Westbrook had hired a new compliance director, someone from a large firm, expensive, experienced. That person implemented comprehensive documentation protocols, including mandatory physical backups of all critical regulatory records. The irony wasn't lost on anyone who knew the story. Michelle Graves sent me a LinkedIn message around that time, brief, personal. Aris, I wanted you to know that the new documentation systems are working well. We haven't had any audit issues since implementation. I also wanted to apologize for how everything happened. You were right about the backups. You were right about a lot of things. I'm sorry we didn't listen until it cost us. I hope you're doing well wherever you landed. It was the first acknowledgement that maybe, possibly, I'd been doing exactly what I was supposed to do all along. I appreciated the message, but it didn't change anything. Because the lesson wasn't that I was right and Nathan was wrong. The lesson was that organizations reveal their values through who they believe and who they dismiss. Westbrook believed the VP with the modernization agenda over the specialist with the binder full of documentation. That wasn't an accident. That was a choice, and choices have consequences. The $100,000 fine was just the most obvious consequence. The real cost was everything that came with it, the damaged reputation, the lost trust, the knowledge that when it mattered, leadership chose charisma over competence. No reinstatement offer fixes that. At Hartman and Associates, my binder system is standard practice. Every compliance specialist maintains physical backups. Louise calls it Patel's protocol in meetings, which is embarrassing and gratifying in equal measure. When new hires ask why we maintain paper records when we have digital systems, I tell them the truth. Systems fail, technology crashes, digital files corrupt. When a regulatory auditor asks for documentation, the system crashed isn't acceptable. This is insurance. Hope we never need it, but grateful it exists if we do. No one calls it clutter. No one suggests it's outdated. Because at Hartman, people understand that the unglamorous work of preparation is exactly what prevents disasters. That's the difference between a company that values appearance and one that values substance. Sometimes people ask if I regret how things ended with Westbrook, if I wish I'd helped them avoid the fine, if I feel guilty about the layoffs. The honest answer is complicated. I don't regret maintaining thorough records. I don't regret refusing to compromise compliance for convenience. I don't regret standing behind the quality of my work, even when it cost me. But I also don't take satisfaction in the company's suffering. The fine hurt people who had nothing to do with Nathan's decisions. Good people lost jobs because of choices they didn't make. That's not justice. That's just collateral damage. What I learned from all of this is that doing the right thing doesn't guarantee the right outcome. Sometimes it guarantees the opposite. Sometimes it means watching everything collapse and having to choose between rescue and accountability. I chose accountability, not because I wanted to punish anyone, because rescuing organizations from their own bad decisions teaches them that bad decisions don't have real consequences, that the thorough person will always be there to clean up the mess, that they can dismiss expertise right up until they need it, and it'll be available on demand. That's not how consequences work. That's not how respect is built. My grandfather used to say that the best time to fix a problem is before it becomes a problem. The second best time is immediately after it becomes obvious. Westbrook had two opportunities. Before firing me, they could have verified that their digital systems were actually sufficient. After firing me, they could have immediately hired someone to rebuild the documentation infrastructure. They did neither. They waited until a regulatory audit forced the issue, and by then, the person who could have helped them had every reason not to. That's not my failure. That's theirs. I'm at peace with how things unfolded. Not because everything worked out perfectly, because I did what I was supposed to do, even when it was hard, even when it cost me, even when it would have been easier to just follow orders and hope for the best. Quality is quality, competence matters, and the person maintaining the ridiculous binder might just be the person standing between success and a $100,000 fine. Westbrook learned that lesson the expensive way. At Hartman & Associates, we practice it every day. And somewhere, probably, Nathan Westbrook is at another company, implementing another modernization initiative, dismissing another thorough person as resistant to change. That person, whoever they are, has my sympathy and my advice. Keep the binder. Do the work right. Don't compromise quality for convenience. Because eventually, inevitably, the bill comes due. And when it does, the person who prepared for that moment is the only one who won't be surprised. Stories like this exist because somewhere, someone else is being called resistant for being thorough, outdated for being careful, paranoid for being prepared. If this resonated, that subscribe button represents building a community that values substance over appearance, competence over charisma, preparation over convenience. We're moving toward 2,000 subscribers together, and every person who joins helps create space for stories about the cost of doing things right, the price of speaking up, and the consequences when organizations forget that the unglamorous work often matters most. This isn't about validation or vindication, it's about honoring the truth that quality matters, even when, especially when, no one's watching. And maybe someone out there maintaining their own version of that binder needs to hear that they're not wrong for refusing to compromise, that doing the work right, even when it costs something, is exactly what integrity looks like. These stories matter. Hopefully, this one reached someone who needed to hear it.